whole different can of worms. But of all the candidates that we could run in Michigan, Mike Rogers might actually be our best pick. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back in with a new video, and I hope everyone is having a great day. I'm having a great day myself, and before I get into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, join the channel today. These are all great ways to support the daily content, but enough of the promotional stuff, let us get into it, because we have breaking news out of Michigan. As the 2026 Michigan Senate race has become increasingly competitive in recent days. And I know that sounds crazy because, well, the 2026 Michigan Senate race isn't for what? A year and a half? So we don't really know who the candidates are, and it's very early. So it's kind of crazy to say that, well, it's become very competitive in recent days. I understand that, but a couple days ago, for those that don't know, Democrat Senator Gary Peters of Michigan just announced that he is retiring. He's not going to run for re-election, and this came as a complete surprise to everyone, including Democrats, because Democrats were expecting Gary Peters to run for re-election in 2026, but now he is not running. And this is a big win for Republicans because Gary Peters was the incumbent since 2014, but he's a big name in Michigan politics. He's been there for like 20, 30 years in Congress and I believe the state Senate. So he's a big name in Michigan politics. And most Democrats thought that Gary Peters was going to run for re-election in 2026. Now, he is getting a little bit older. Like, I'm not saying he's like 95 years old, but he's starting to get up there in age a little bit. But most people thought he's going to run for re-election one more time, and then maybe 2032, then he may retire. But nope, Gary Peters announced, no, I'm not running for re-election. I am retiring. This is it. I'm not going to run again. That's it. And this came as a complete shock to everyone, especially Democrats. Most Democrats, they were banking on Gary Peters to run again. But now, they are scrambling to find someone to replace him because Gary Peters, he was a relatively speaking strong candidate. And Democrats, they already have a very tough Senate map in 26. And we've gone over this many times, but look at the map here. Democrats had to flip 4 seats. 4. To get a real majority. If they flip 3, that's only 50-50. So even if they win a place like Maine and North Carolina, Republicans still got 51 to Senate. And even if they win, I don't know, Ohio by some miracle, it's 50-50 in the Senate. And yeah, you got to worry about Murkowski, but J.D. Vance is a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So already the map was awful for Dems. But now, not only do they got to flip 3 Senate seats, but they got to hold on to Georgia, now probably Michigan, and maybe New Hampshire. So they have to hold on to 3 Senate seats that could actually flip, especially Georgia, now Michigan, because Gary Peters is gone. But even New Hampshire, and now their pathway to the Senate majority is all but dead. Because they have to hold everything. Pray that they don't lose either Georgia or Michigan, and flip 3 Senate seats. Which, by the way, with this map is so unlikely that there's a good chance the Republicans actually end up with a net gain in 2026. So it is not looking good for Dems whatsoever. And on top of that, they're probably going to run Pete Buttigieg. Yes, that Pete Buttigieg, the same bozo that ran South Bend, Indiana into the ground and was one of the worst Secretary of Transportation in American history. He was awful. He was incompetent. The fact is, he was not prepared for that job whatsoever. And most people would agree he was an awful Secretary of Transportation. And on top of that, he was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, not in Michigan, but in Indiana just 5 years ago. And most people would agree he was an awful mayor as well. So he has ties to Indiana, not Michigan. He was an awful mayor on top of that, and he was one of the worst Secretary of Transportations we ever had. What a great combination. Democrats should 100% run him, and there's a good chance other Dems do in fact run. So this primary could be an absolute disaster for Democrats very quickly. If other people join in and Pete Buttigieg runs well, this primary would be an utter disaster for Democrats. But let's be honest. The Democrats are not the only ones that have to pick a candidate, obviously. The Republican Party, they gotta make a good decision. This is a very important pick because if you run someone shit, you're probably gonna lose to Pete Buttigieg. Even though he's a very weak candidate, you cannot run someone like Tudor Dixon. You just can't. You have to run someone that is someone that you know can probably win. And there's a couple options in Michigan, but there's one in particular that all but announced that he's probably going to run for the Senate seat in 2026. Former Congressman Mike Rogers. And for those that don't know, this is the same Mike Rogers that ran in 2024 and barely, and I mean barely, lost Michigan. He lost it by what? 20,000 votes? That's it. 20,000 votes he lost to Slotkin by, which is 0.3%. Which I know it's an underperformance compared to Trump, but it's not by 15 points. He underperformed Trump by, what, 1.7%, like 100,000 votes? Which is not good. But Mike Rogers, he almost won. He nearly won in 2024, and more than likely, with the third-party candidates, when you factor them in, he probably would have won. I mean, neither candidate got over 50. I mean, Elisa Slotkin got what? 48.6%, which is only slightly more than what Kamala Harris got in Michigan. Harris got 48.3%. So you start doing the math and you realize, oh, wait a minute, a chunk of Trump voters, they either didn't vote down ballot or they voted for the Libertarian, they voted for the Constitutional Party, which is a big deal. That's like 2% of the vote right there. So you start doing the math, and if it wasn't for third-party candidates, it would have been damn close, but I think it would have been just enough. I mean, I'm talking about, like, within, like, a couple thousand votes of Mike Rogers winning the state of Michigan in 2024. So, yes, he underperformed Trump by, 2 points or so, but that's because a chunk of Trump voters down ballot, they just didn't vote for Mike Rogers, and that's part of the problem with the GOP. A lot of Trump voters, they love Trump, they might love Vance, but they don't really trust someone like Mike Rogers, for example. And that's a problem that even in 2026, we got to deal with. But if Mike Rogers came damn close to winning against Slotkin, and now you replace Slotkin with Pete Buttigieg, who's far weaker, who has carpetbagging allegations, I mean, not allegations, it's a fact. He carpetbagged from Indiana to Michigan. He's an awful Secretary of Transportation. That is a perfect storm of events for Mike Rogers. And well, today, look at the statement he put out just like 2 hours ago. I spent the last 2 years traveling across Michigan with the support of President Trump and millions of voters. What I learned more than anything is that hardworking Michiganders deserve strong and honest representation that will have President Trump's back. Since receiving more votes than any other Republican candidate that has ever run for the Senate seat in Michigan, the tremendous outpouring of support and encouragement I've received since November proves that our mission to send a real fighter to the U.S. Senate has just begun. That's why Christy and I are strongly considering joining the fight once again to be the ally that President Trump needs and the leader that Michigan deserves. Good news is coming soon. Mike Rogers. Yes, if Mike Rogers runs, I 100% endorse him. I know he's not the best on the issues. I understand that his time in Congress, there were some very questionable things he did. But Mike Rogers is someone that will be loyal to Trump. If Trump says vote on this, he will vote on it. If he says vote yes or no, he will vote yes or no based on what Trump wants. Mike Rogers is the type of Republican that will do that. I mean, he's not perfect, but Mike Rogers in 2024, he barely lost against Slotkin. But now you replace Slotkin with an even weaker candidate in Pete Buttigieg, and now it's a different story. And I know it is a midterm. It is the state of Michigan in a midterm. That's a whole different can of worms. But of all the candidates that we could run in Michigan, Mike Rogers might actually be our best pick. And if he does run for the Senate seat, which I hope he does, I would support him. And I know people are going to be mad at him for running because he's not the best on the issues, but Mike Rogers is not a Susan Collins type. Or not, I should say Collins, a Murkowski type. He's not a Murkowski type. He's not. Like, sometimes he may have a bad vote here and there, but the vast majority of the time, Mike Rogers will actually help us. He will actually help us on many key votes. And I think he's our best option, quite honestly, our only option to win Michigan. Because you look at the Senate Wikipedia, and look at who else may run. Tudor Dixon. Do you really want to run Tudor Dixon? Really? Tudor Dixon would be a complete disaster. She would get killed. Do not run Tudor Dixon whatsoever. Maybe you could run John James, but he might run for governor, which that's our whole story. We may have Mike Rogers run for Senate and John James runs for governor, which I would support as well. But I really believe we have to get Mike Rogers to run for the seat and get behind him ASAP. Don't piss around and wait 5 months and let people like Tudor Dixon run. No. Get everyone we can behind Mike Rogers, support him, avoid a garbage primary, and let Democrats have their own primary that more than likely will end in a complete disaster because, well, I mean, you look at who's potentially going to run. Pete Buttigieg is a weak candidate. He's extremely weak. But for whatever reason, a lot of Democrats are saying, oh no, Pete Buttigieg is actually a strong candidate. No, he's not. He's a dog shit candidate that would get crushed. And you may have other Democrats run as well. Maybe Haley Stevens, maybe Rashid Tlaib. She may run as well. I'm not saying it's going to happen. But there are a bunch of other big name Democrats that are strongly considering running for the Senate seat. They may run. So Democrats have a big problem here. And I cannot believe I'm saying this, but if Mike Rogers runs and it ends up being Pete Buttigieg, we have an extremely strong chance at flipping Michigan in 2024. I know that sounds crazy, but you start doing the math, you start realizing the circumstances in 2026, you gotta like our chances. And I know it is a blue wave. It's gonna be a midterm. Now, it's gonna be a blue wave? I don't think so. I think it's gonna be more like a blue, it's gonna be a blue year, a blue leaning environment. Like, kind of like 2022 was. It was like kind of a Republican environment, but it's not going to be a blue wave like 2018 or 2006. It's probably going to be, oh, yeah, Democrats probably win back the House, but they're not going to flip 15 Senate seats. They're not going to flip 500 House seats. That's not going to happen. They're going to maybe take back the House by a couple seats, but they may be in trouble in Michigan. Like, that's entirely possible that they are in trouble in the state of Michigan. Again, we got to see what happens. A lot could change, but this map looks brutal for Dems. And another thing, it's like, they're going to defend so many states. If they want to expand, get more Senate seats, they had to target North Carolina, target Ohio, Iowa, Florida, Texas. It's like, these are Republican states. So you're already stretched thin with 3 states you have to defend, and you have to flip 4 Republican states with, which by the way, only one of them's is fairly easy or easier to win in Maine. Even though it's Susan Collins, it's still a fairly Democrat state. But Susan Collins more than likely is going to win in Maine. So even if you win Maine, you got to win North Carolina, which is not a guarantee, by the way. And you have to win, I don't know, Ohio? Do you think that's going to happen? I highly, highly, highly doubt it. Is it possible? Of course, anything's possible, but right now, this map is so bad for Democrats that I really believe if Mike Rogers runs, he could win. He could actually have a chance at winning. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but against Pete Buttigieg, this race might be a toss-up. Where this is a race that could go down the wire, and if Republicans do better than expected in 2026, who knows? Maybe you somehow flip Michigan, but we're not going to know what happens for a couple more years. Obviously, it's what? It's barely 2025. We're not even into February of 2025 yet. We're talking about 2026. But a lot could change, and I really believe that Republicans are in a great position to flip Michigan. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.